Welcome. Welcome to another edition of Teaching Tuesday. This is Holly Drake with Wild Blessings, and today is going to be wildly fun and very empowering. We're going to be talking about power from many different aspects, power outages and the power of the Lord, and just the power of wild edible plants. And I've got some incredibly special guests. Come on over, Jody, that I cannot wait to learn from and have you learn from. But I'm just really glad you're here. Welcome to all you new members. Every time you communicate and comment, it makes me feel like I'm not just talking to a computer. So please be a part of this community. And the more you do what I teach you, the more it becomes you're reclaiming your heritage and what God has given us for our well-being. So this is my dear friend, Jody Maier.
Hello. It's so good to be back.
Yes. She shared with us a few weeks ago on her favorite ways to have water in case we didn't have the ability to just turn on the tap and use water. So if you haven't seen that, I will put the link to that class below in the comments. Let's see. Well, I don't know. Let me see. Let's share our tea first. Okay. So I made, I'm still focusing on Jerusalem artichokes. Look at this baby. Is this not amazing? It's like digging for treasure. I got buckets full of these things. Anyway, so because they have the inulin in them, which causes gassiness, windiness, and so forth, you can break that down by fermenting it. So I fermented these Jerusalem artichokes, and we're going to be eating those in our incredible wild lunch. Our entire lunch is going to be wild except for some carrots and zucchini. Wild. So that's why I decided I would make peppermint tea today. And whoops. So let me give you this cute little glass, this little mug. And I have some milkweed honey. Do you want to sweeten it or do you just want it the way it is? Okay, good. So I'll let you sweeten in just a second. Let me get one for Peggy. Peggy's here too. So happy to have Peggy with me. And
Peggy's babysitting Max.
Is he on her lap? No, he's on the floor.
Was.
Okay, so this will be Peggy's. And Jace, do you want some peppermint tea?
No.
Nope.
Okay. If you got some extra, yes.
Okay, awesome. All right, so then what I did is the way you make an herbal honey is you just pour, like this was full of milkweed flowers back in the early summer when the milkweed flowers were out. I poured good honey over that, and then every time I turned past it on the counter, I'd flip it over and then flip it again. So this has been flipped many times, and now it's completely infused into the jar. And then I didn't want the milkweed flowers in my tea, so I sifted those out and put them in my little honey jar. So here's the spoon, and you can, let me go ahead and sweeten Jason's first because I know he has a sweet tooth. So the honey, I have many different honeys. I have bee balm honey, I have milkweed honey, I have peppermint honey, I even have thyme honey, I have all kinds of onion honey, I have lots of honeys.
How about you, Peggy? Want some?
Do you want a little bit of honey in yours? Milkweed?
Yes.
She does. Okay. So and you can use that wooden spoon to stir if you'd like. You want to take that over to her? Use that so you don't burn your fingers.
There we go.
Okay. So let me tell you briefly what it is I'm doing for our lunch. So I've got my friends over for lunch, and we're going to have a wild lunch. I'm going to bring this over so you don't have to worry about it. But I've got some burdock root in here that I have decocted until it's really tender, and then I have flavoring it with some oriental flavorings and added a little bit of onion. And then this is amaranth seed. And amaranth is the highest in protein and an incredibly invasive plant. So this is, whoops, what I like to do with this is I like to pop them. So you put them on, you roast them in a skillet on the stove, and then they pop like popcorn. And so I have a video of that, which I'll post in the comments of it popping. But once they've been popped, then it destroys the phthalates or what, can't pronounce that word. And I don't understand how that works, but maybe you could explain it, but I don't know. Anyway, so this is going to then, I'm going to take the broth from decocting the burdock, and I'm going to then make this into a quinoa, which is it's a relative of quinoa. So I'll do that when Jody starts speaking, so I'm not taking time now. Another thing that's on nature's wave are dandelion leaves. And so they're back. They like the cold weather. So gather them and get the roots this time of year as well. So this is going to go in our kind of our quinoa, burdock, dandelion. We're
So
just
do
going to
you
see.
Do you see any other part of the dandelion to be able to spot them, or do you just have to know the leaf?
Well, the best way to find them is in a organic farm where they like to kind of grow, but where the grass has not been mowed, and so the leaves get large, and so they, if you mow them, you'll have really small dandelion leaves, and they're kind of slim pickings. But this was from a farm where they haven't been mowing the yard, and the yard was just, it wasn't where they kept their vegetables, it was just their grass, and it was just growing like crazy. So I collected a bunch, I washed it, I'll chop it up, and I'll take pictures of this for you. But I really want to get to Jody because she's got so much to share. Before I do, though, I want to share with you what's on my wild counter. So we follow nature's wave, and every week I show you what there is to eat right now on here in the high country anyway. And so following nature's wave is following the energy. So the leaves that are out right now, I found garlic mustard. I mean, really healthy garlic mustard. So it loves cold weather. It's a Brassicaceae family, a mustard. So that was exciting. I never want that on my land, though. And next week, we'll be talking about what plants you got to bring to your land and which ones you want to have access to, but you don't want to have on your land. So garlic mustard is one of those. It's one of those dreadable edibles, but it's really good for you. All right. And then I also found chickweed and I found dandelion. So there's a lot of really good leaves that are out now, even though we've already had a frost and most of the leaves are, dead. Okay. The nuts are still out for the picking. And so I went a hickory nut collecting the other day by myself with Max on top of Peace Flaker's mountain. And I got a lot of hickories, but I was really disappointed because look at this. Look at all the ones that floated. So I'm wondering if later in the season, if you don't get them soon as they drop off the tree, if they become bad for some reason, I don't know. But I've just become obsessed with this nut and it's so delicious. So I'm going to go ahead and open up the ones that are floated, which means that they're not good for consumption. And maybe they'll still be good for making milk with, which is what I love the most. Okay, so the hickory nuts were out. The fruit, I still got some apples, but because we had a deep freeze, it caused most of the apples to just turn mushy. So I think apple season's kind of like on its end, but I did get these and I got some wonderful pears as well. And Jody brought me this one. Isn't that gorgeous? Okay, the seeds are still out to collect and the berries. So this is sumac. You really want to collect all your sumac before it gets too much further, especially on a dry day, because you do not want the folic acid, or it's the malic acid. I can't remember which acid, but if you let it rain and then collect it, you won't get that awesome lemony vitamin C flavor that is like a lemon. So collect those and deberry them and then put them in a jar that you can keep throughout the winter. What else did I find? Oh, I found crab apples the day before the freeze. And so I made some more crab apple jelly. Look at that color. Isn't that gorgeous? I made a lot of granola and I used plantain seeds. And I used lamb's quarter seeds, which are so high in nutrition. And I didn't put amaranth in there, but I could have. And I also used black walnuts. So I also cured a ton of black walnuts this year or this week. And that was fun. I did that with my friend Austin Button. He was helpful. So I made a black
plantains still out now, so that
No. I have, look, you can see how many I have stored from when they were.
So the leaves have all died back.
No, well, there are some leaves right now. Yeah, there are still some leaves. There's still stuff. It depends on where you live and how cold it's been. And like if you're down off the mountain, I bet you plantain is just plentiful. But I'm just talking about surfing nature's wave where I live at 3,500 feet. So, okay, I made some walnut bread, some black walnut bread with its banana bread. And then you girls can have that for dessert today. Super good. Of course, the BeautyBerries are the latest berry that stays out all winter. Kind of like a late snack for birds and for Holly. And it makes a delicious jelly. I do have on in front of me some bittersweet, and I don't want you to think that's because it's edible. It's just beautiful. So it's eye candy and it's toxic. So don't eat them, but you can certainly make wreaths and things like that with it. I learned a lot about Jerusalem artichokes this week because I've been cooking with them constantly. I have learned that if you ferment them, if you boil them for 25 minutes, if you cook them with acidic plants like tomatoes or lemons or something like that, it absolutely does break down that inulin. And so you won't be constantly farting, which is nice. Because what it does is it's actually breaking down the inulin and through those processes of the boiling or the fermenting. The hands down most nutritious way to do it is with fermenting. It's alive. Look at those bubbles. So this is what we're going to be putting into our wild lunch today. And we'll take pictures of our lunch so you get to kind of virtually enjoy it with us. This was exciting. Speaking of roots. So this is the time of year to really get those roots because the energy went up from the shoots into the leaves, into the flower buds, into the flowers, into the seed pods, into the seeds, into the berries and the fruits and the nuts, and then boom, right down into the roots again because the frost came. And that'll be where all of the energy is stored throughout the winter and also into the sap and the bark of the trees. So we'll be doing classes on eating bark and drinking sap and making the most of roots and seeds. So we'll be doing a whole class on roots and a whole class on seeds. And next week, like I said, we'll be talking about the wild garden. Okay, this was a gift from my friend Allie. I was out in Preston yesterday. I thought of swinging by and grabbing you, but I didn't. Anyway, this is, anyone guess what that is? What is that, guys? You could tell if you smelled it.
Oh,
Horseradish. Yes. I think you need a hazmat suit when you're dealing with this because, man, it's so powerful. So we'll put some of this. Let's just see how many things we can get into our lunch today. And that'll be fun. For dinner tonight, Jason and I are having clam chowder, and that'll have bacon in it. So you know it'll be good, but it'll also have the Jerusalem artichokes instead of potatoes. But I decided to have that for our dinner tonight instead of for our lunch because I wasn't sure if you guys would eat clams. So much abundance, and I'm so excited about it. Collecting seeds. I can't wait to share with you a whole class on that. It's just, you can feel so loved, so provided for. Don't forget that scripture that says, we look to you, Lord, to give us our food in due season. So every time I go out with my empty basket, I think about that verse and I go, Lord, I'm looking to you. Would you fill this basket? And he always fills not one, not two, but 3 or 4, and my whole car or truck load, much to my husband's dismay, with incredible blessings, wild blessings. So it says, we look to you to give us our food in due season. You give to us, we gather it up. You open your hand and we are satisfied. You send forth your spirit and we are created and you renew the face of the ground. So right now we're going into a winter rest, into that pause we talked about back in the spring. And it'll look like there's not much happening, but much is. So I hope you've been collecting along with me. But right now we're going to be talking about something super important. And our verse for this week was Proverbs 22:3, which I decorated and put on the wall with all these November colors. And it says, the wise man foresees the difficulties ahead and prepares for them. But the fool goes blindly on and suffers the consequences. So I'm not a fear monger. I'm not into fear porn. I'm into just being wise and looking at understanding the times and recognizing that, I sent you all a video of John Oliver talking about all of the different reasons for power outages. Squirrels, I think there's 600 power outages every year based on squirrels. Even slugs will turn off the power. Even balloons, and it showed a video of kids at a party letting their balloons go into the sky and it hit the power lines and caused a power grid outage. And so you never know what the purpose. It might not be an evil intent or political or whatever. It could just be something as ridiculous as balloons or squirrels. So it doesn't matter. Either way, prepare for, how's it go? hope for the best and prepare for the worst. And it's best to prepare now when you've got the time. And it's best to prepare your spirit now while you have the time, because the time to learn to obey God is during times of peace. Soldiers prepare for battle during times of peace. They don't learn how to use their weapons during the actual battle. They do it during times of peace. So we can, as believers, be obedient to God instantly and just say, yes, Lord, and spend time connecting with him. And we'll talk about that at the end. And I have a special treat. My dear friend, Heather Pierre, is alive today because her mother was a forager. And so I interviewed her last night in California. And so we're going to put that interview at the very end of today's class. So I'm excited to have Jody take over and share with us some really wise ideas, powerful ideas for what to do if the power were to go out. Come on over, Jody. Okay.
This is my all-time favorite thing to talk about. I love the idea of adventure, and I lived through some pretty horrible times, and I had to learn the hard way. But it amazed me how creative you can be. And I learned that it's better to be creative when you're not in a state of anxiety. I came to the mountains, the beautiful mountains. It's a gorgeous, powerful day today because the sun is so strong here in the mountains. But at the beach, we have hurricanes, so we could add that to the squirrels and the slugs. We endured hurricanes, and I was 2 weeks without power. And I mean, and I couldn't get off the island that I lived on. And boy, did I learn a big lesson.
What
But-
island was this?
Well, it was the Outer Banks, and I lived on Collington Harbor. We had 2 bridges which washed out between us and the main island.
Wow, that's a lot worse than balloons.
Yes, and it was quite an adventure, and it was cold. It was January, so we were, even though it's a warmer climate there, we were chilly, and we did not have an open fireplace. We had a closed, because they are very careful about the way they allow you to have open fireplaces there. So we had to have a closed propane gas log. And as you know, that they're pretty good for heat, but not really. And you certainly can't cook on them. So that was the tough thing. So let me reach over here real quick. And I wanted to just, I'm sure most of you know this, but we'll just go through the rudimentary things about heat. As you know, something to keep in your mind, heat rises, cool air falls. Now, this applies to everything from the way you dress to the way you cook, and certainly the way you stay warm. So I'm going to divide this into 2 sections. We have wonderful God-given solar power, and that is amazing. We'll just go over a few things that you can do with your solar power. Today would be a powerful day because the sun is really bright. Unfortunately, during cold weather, we don't always have those days. So, but it's amazing how much sun you can pull out even on a cloudy day. The other wonderful resource is fire, and our fire is amazing. It's magical. I think people are always just mesmerized by just looking at fire. There's something so special about it. But
Especially when it's contained.
oh yes, contained, in control. We're talking about control power here, not out of control power. With the sun today, I want to just quickly go over some things that are that you can use your sun resource for. You can do it for cooking. I brought my wonderful sun oven here. This is not your primary cooking source, because I will be honest with you, I have tried it, and I'm sure there are many others that would do a better job. This is really easy. It just folds into a tiny little thing. And of course,
Can I hold this for you?
you put it out. Thank you. Put it out and it's directly to the sun. You may have to move it around as the day goes forward, but and that's important. You do need the direct sun on it. You zip it up. And I will tell you, it just takes a very long time. I cooked yesterday on it just to see, and yesterday was a lovely sunny day, hot. In fact, I sat out in the sun for a while, but it will take at least 2 hours to bring your water to almost boil. I can honestly tell you, I've never had boiling water.
So you couldn't cook a casserole with that?
You can, but it's slow cooking, and you have to be careful that the food that you cook is not very dense. This would actually work better as a warmer, and something that would be canned, a vegetable that was canned vegetable or whatever.
Something pre-cooked.
Pre-cooked.
That need to be warmed up. Yeah.
So how much does that cost?
Oh, it's dollars. I mean, they're not very expensive, probably under $20. I've had this one for a long time. But you do want to use lighter cooking material in here to cook in. I don't like to cook in plastic, but Tupperware would be ideal because it's not as dense as a heavy pot that you would put in.
Oh, that's
here.
an interesting thought.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And you do want to keep whatever you put in covered because you're holding the heat in, the little heat that you get. But it's also good for other things too. You can have, I'll be right back. You can warm up your hot water bottle. You can put jars of water in there so that you have your resources for warm water. Believe me, when you're without warm water, that's what you think about a lot. Washing your hands, a cloth to just wipe your face with warm water.
That's probably worth it just for that.
Oh, yes, it really is. And of course, once you get it to that, you can also, you get it to a temperature, you can cover it with a towel or something, and it'll stay warm. The same with whatever you've managed to cook on there. And again, I don't want you to think that you can't cook on that. I just want you to know, honestly, it takes a long time, and you're not going to get the fast heat, and you're not going to get the temperature up. For some things, the less dense things that you have to cook, the better it would be. A roast, absolutely no, it would not do that. You can, and I brought with me today, of course, my hot water bottle. And when you're talking about being cold in the winter, you can always put your hot water bottle in your jacket. You can sleep with it, and it keeps your water warm for hours and hours. Let's see what we've got here. I brought my camp shower. This is another way that you can use the sun. I have 2 or 3 of these. You can hang them in a tree. Make sure the dark side is towards the sun, keeping in mind that dark draws the sun.
Okay.
But the lighter colors will reflect the sun. So put it in a tree or somewhere where the sun can get around it as much as you can. And you can direct it towards the sun. You can get really, really hot shower water.
Well, it's like in the hose. You know how we leave the hoses out in the garage?
That's another
driveway?
resource. Just put your hose out. Of course, remember, no electric. You can't turn on your faucet and fill your hose.
That's true.
But if you can put water into your hose and you can siphon it, that's something you can do. And lay your black hose, preferably out in the sun. Amazing how much water, warm water you can get from that. So it's a mess. When I was living through that 2 weeks, I'm rather fastidious about my yard and my house, but it was a learning curve for me, and it was quite a mess. I mean, there was just everything all over the place, but you get it together eventually.
So you had all these things before that happened.
I had some things. I did not have, for instance, the shower. What I used in place of this was a heavy utility, I guess you would call it a leaf bag, the highest mill that you can have of a dark bag. Now, obviously, you can't pick up a trash bag full of water, much too heavy, but you can fill it with, say, maybe 3 gallons.
Okay.
Would be something I could do. Tie it off and put a stick through it and you get the same thing. You would probably at that point, I'll be right back. You'd probably need to find something like this. Most of us have something like this around the house.
Yeah.
Something we could put into that trash bag, and not at the lowest level, but at a medium level,
Okay.
that where you could stick perhaps a wine cork in there,
Okay.
something that would go off. And this is where it's kind of fun. It's an adventure to see what you can come up with. And then you can just siphon the water out as you need it, so that it doesn't come gushing out of the bag. But that was what I used then. These shower bags are easier for the long run. I have 2 of those, and that would provide a way for 2 people to have a decent shower.
Okay.
So I've talked about the water bottles, which you can actually even heat your water bottles in the sunshine without using the sun oven. We have the cooking now. That was something that we needed to get over. It was cold outside, and that was tough. We had just a regular charcoal grill, but we didn't have enough charcoal to take us through 2 weeks. It's amazing how you go through. So you begin to start thinking about other ways to start your fires, what you have around that you can use to cook on. I caution you about cooking on anything but hardwood. If you can learn to identify your trees, because a lot of wood that we would put and cook on gives off a lot of resin, and that may not taint your food, but it will certainly leave it tasting funny. So there were 2 things that I learned. I love the fire pit. I just got a new fire pit again this year, and I had made, after my 2 weeks of hell, but we lived and I learned a lot. I learned that I wanted to have a tripod, and this made my life so simple. We do use the fire pit, and we would get that going well during the day and keep our source of wood. Again, you need to think ahead, make sure you have your wood. I would pick up little twigs. I would pick up wood wherever I could, try to set it aside. You don't have to cut your wood necessarily. If you have a forest or some forested area, you can forage in, and you can forage for your wood. But most of it, if it's been laying on the ground, is going to be loaded with moisture. So I had a little pile that I started, and I still do this. I don't waste my wood that I find in the woods. I take it and sit it up so that it would dry. You can't burn. This is a hard thing to learn, but you cannot burn green wood. You'll just be exhausted trying to get it to go. But I used the tripod that I had made, and it can be anywhere where you could sit it over your fire pit. And I did have that welded. It cost a little bit to have it done, but it's been worth its weight in gold, because I bought a chain from Lowe's, and I hang my cast iron Dutch oven on it. And oh my, you can bake bread in that. I mean, it just upgraded my life so much to have some place where I could cook. And so we did stews. We could I did breads. These are things you just have to experiment with. But the tripod offers you the opportunity to either bring it down closer to the heat to get it going if you want to make your bacon and eggs, or you pull it up for a time of slow cooking. Tremendous flavor to your food, and you don't have to sit there the whole day and watch it cook. You can just check on it sporadically. The other thing that we use our barbecue. I've talked about that. The other thing that I found was interesting is I'm a tea person, and I need something right away. And when you want to keep your core temperature up when you're cold and you're wearing your jackets and your hats and your gloves and all your warmies in the house, I found this at this little, it's called a Twig Stove. And this you may use in your house. The other things, obviously you can't use your sun oven in your house. Most other things you can't use in your house to cook in because you have to be concerned with the carbon that's being put off in the air. And this can be very toxic. And unfortunately, many people under dire circumstances bring the wrong things into their house. Mm-hmm. They cause fires and they're asphyxiated, and it's just not, you need to know ahead of time what you can and cannot do in your house. The last thing you want is when you can't use a telephone and you know that a fire engine can't get near you because we were flooded. You have to be careful, so absolutely careful that you do the right thing. But if you're fortunate enough to have an open fireplace where you can actually burn logs and you have a flue that's going up, you can safely burn in there. But this little thing here is so simple.
How much is it?
Probably about, I would say, $25. Mm-hmm. Now this is mainly designed, and it's really nice. It's mainly designed to be something light you can put in your backpack if you have to pack out,
bug out
of an area.
Mm-hmm.
They call it bug out, but if you have to pack out, it's a couple pounds. And this one in particular is kind of nice. My string there, in that it does have. It just folds up like so, goes together, puts in a little bag. You can take some dry twigs with you. These are painters. I cut them up. These are painter sticks, and they're it's called fat wood. They're made out of pine, but I can take one and break it into tiny little pieces, real simple like this, and they start up perfectly. Thanks.
Just to get this out of the way.
I'm fighting with the artichokes here. And this is just a little bag of starters. But this particular little booger, you can actually put on your kitchen stove. And even if it's a glass stove, like I have now, and you put your twigs in here, you put your starter in. And this is nice in that it has a little shelf type thing. Where is it? Here it is, which allows you can push it in and out to get your flame to go higher as it burns real good. You can slow it down and push it in. How cool
is that?
And this has a little tiny battery in it, but you have to be careful if you store it. Batteries are a necessity, new batteries, because they don't last forever when you put something away. But it's so easy. You just plug this in. It has a tiny little motor in it and keeps that air coming in to feed the fire. And you can have a cup of tea in a minute on this.
Wow. And can we do that for lunch?
Well, we don't have the fan unless we have another battery in there.
Is it a 9-volt?
Yeah, we can do that.
I want to try that. That looks so cool. What kind of things do you have in starters right there?
Well, this came with it, and I was going to just talk about some wonderful starters. don't waste anything. You were talking last time about your nut holes and all of your just the little dried pieces that you get when you're taking the berries off of something. All these are twigs, and they're really kind of pretty. You can put baskets of them around, or you can just collect them and hang them somewhere if you're fortunate enough to have an attic. That's a good thing. You don't want to hang them in a real moist area because they will take in the moisture again. But we talked about some of the things we have. Well, let me see here. We have all of our, let me put it down here, 1 minute. My fire starters. We have, you know what I found out recently? Dried fungus. Not the kind that you eat, although you could do that. I like to eat the ones that are edible. But if you're walking through the woods and you see, what are those big things that grow on the side of trees? They look like shelves almost. They make wonderful fire starters. And they
Are you talking about these right here?
Yeah, bigger ones. But that's nice too. And they dry beautifully. And they just a little bit of a knife. And oh my goodness, it just goes up immediately. But that's your fire starter. You have cattails, wonderful, they're pretty. Yeah. And you just break them apart when they're really dry and put it in your twig stove, or even to help you start your other stoves, that would be fine. So pine needles, dried pine needles. So when you're in a pinch, you really do have a lot of resources around you. No reason to ever fear, getting warm. There's no reason to ever starve, and there's no reason that you can't survive, even in really cold temperatures.
Well, this all used to be common sense. I mean, like
most of it is.
Yeah, but since the electricity and the power, we've become so dependent that we've lost some basic skills.
And we panic, and we don't want to ever be, it's nice to just learn these things from a peaceful, happy place. Think of it as an adventure. We've talked about having a blackout party. Try it, especially if you have people who are willing to do this with you. Kids love it. They absolutely adore it. I'm going to get into that a little bit more. But for your fire starters, one of the things you can always use, and if you don't have resources that are dry to you, there are many things that you keep around, around your house.
Do you need some water?
Sanitary napkins.
Want a drink?
No, that's fine. And of course, paper. I have a collection of paper, and you pull your little paper out. Excuse me. Matches. Keep dry matches, please. They last forever as long as you keep them dry. They're very inexpensive. The big lighters, or any other kind of lighter, they will not last forever, but they will last a long time. Just buy them 3 in a packet or whatever. Keep them away. There's something that I have and I couldn't find today called a flint starter. You always have that for the type of twigs and things that we're talking about, and the fire starters that we have. They are very dry. With a flint starter, we should be able to pick it up right away. There's other things that we can have. We can keep around our homes. We can have the sterno, little sterno. Things you can
Isn't that what the military did, Jace? They use the sternos?
3 or 4 in a pack, and they're good. You could even quickly put a sterno into something like this and probably warm up something to drink. You might not get a rolling boil, but you would get something warm into your system. And the other thing that I have, and I was fearful to bring it today, but I have a Coleman propane tank. It's probably 16 ounces, and you can buy these 2 or 3 in a pack, keep them around. They not only, you get a little starter thing that you put on the top, a little starter jet, and so all you have to do is just click it, but you can start them without that. You just have to start it with, I'm a little hesitant about propane, but you can start it with a lighter. And it'll give you a nice steady flame. Marvelous for starting your rocket stoves. Great for starting. You wouldn't need it for something small like this, but mainly for your main cooking. And if your logs are being a little hesitant to get started, your larger logs for a fire, this is a good way to get it started. It's a good, healthy flame. They last a long time and they put out a lot of heat. Be careful with those using them in the house. They can get a little rambunctious.
I just want to bring up, if you've got gas, don't ever throw it on the fire, because that, like, I know you guys are probably way too smart for that, but I do know of a man who, I guess he was 19 or something. Yeah, gasoline.
Oh,
And he threw it on the burn pile to get it started, and it came back to him and burned like 80% of his body.
Yeah.
And he lived. Ugh.
Well, one of the things I
careful.
have written down here to talk about is
Accidents
warning,
happen.
warning.
Mm-hmm.
More accidents happen
Mm-hmm.
when people are put into these situations where they're not familiar. Burns, absolutely. Too many people get burned just trying to do this. That's why it's fun to work on it ahead of time. And you won't even, you won't do this every day. So, you may have to really think it through. Take your time. It's hard to think it through when you're cold, or maybe your kids, you haven't had a cup of coffee. It's just hard to think when you're doing that, but be very careful. Keep that in the front of your mind that you don't want to have an accident at this time.
That's a good point.
One thing I heard recently, I thought it was really interesting. If you're in a situation, and you would know what burns, where you could put on burns, but most people have yellow mustard in their refrigerator. And yellow mustard is excellent. It has antibiotic and antiseptic properties to it. You can put yellow mustard on it. And one of my great prepping things is always keep foil. Foil's wonderful. Foil keeps things covered. Foil keeps things in. Foil is good to wrap things, any number of things that you can use, but you can also use it once you put mustard on. You can put it around your burn and just kind of crumple it around, and you can still use your fingers. You're going to have to work a little harder in a situation where you don't have electric, but a couple days, and it's amazing how the mustard somehow has real good healing properties to it.
The best thing I've ever used is lavender essential oil, like neat. Yeah. You use it straight and on a burn, and not with oil, not with a carrier oil, because that will hold in the heat, but just use the essential oil neat, and it takes away the burn almost instantly. It's amazing.
That's great. And these are things we need to know ahead of time. Even without an emergency, like no electric, it's just nice to know that you can tackle that problem.
Yeah.
Cuts, people will cut themselves with trying to chop wood, trying to even make tinder, it's just amazing how many people will cut themselves during a crisis like that. And we've already talked about having carbon poisoning or asphyxiation. And this is a real big problem. People just don't, in general, common sense comes into play. But if you're not aware of this, you may not think in a crisis. And you might, even with a kerosene stove, you need to be extremely careful to have good ventilation, or you'll become sleepy and headachy, and it just won't dawn on you that you're poisoning yourself. So the one thing I wanted to go into today is staying warm, is using your tent. It's really something I've noticed that you need to figure out, and this is what I did, figure out where you get the most sunshine into your house. And everybody will have a different scenario, but you want to you want to small down your space that you're going to try to keep the most heat in to. Obviously, if you have a fireplace, that's going to be important too. That should factor in, because if you have enough wood to keep it going. But you want to get into the warmest area of your home and try to, I always keep extra plastic sheeting, and I use painter's tape, not duct tape, because when the crisis is over, you don't want to be pulling your paint off with your duct tape. So, but painter's tape usually will come right off. But you do want to secure your area in and make it smaller. So you would duct tape over your doors. Also, you lose a lot of energy through your windows. You do need the sunlight coming in, but if you put an extra layer of clear plastic with your tape, your painter's tape over it, you will insulate yourself for just another few degrees, and that'll make a difference. It'll also help keep the heat in once you've got it, once you bring it in during the sunny part of the day.
So like our fireplace is in our living room, which has a cathedral ceiling. So that's probably not a good place to be.
That is tough, but you can use it for
Cooking
in particular. Tents are wonderful, and this is where it's kind of fun. Kids love this, and it is amazing. One of the natural things that you have are people heat.
Yeah,
we generate a lot of heat.
Keep each other warm.
You can put your children or even yourself
or your dog
in your room that has been where you're trying to conserve as much heat, and you've allowed the passive solar to heat the room as much as it will be during the day. You can put your children in there with their wool caps on. Remember, natural fabrics, your wool caps, your wool socks, and put them into a sleeping bag. And it's amazing. Maybe one would be a little cool, but if you have a passel of kids, they're going to be hot. They'll probably be out of their sleeping bags. So sleeping bags kept, in a container somewhere, nice and dry, and put those on your list.
I should probably air mine out. They've been sitting there for years.
Yes, it's good to do that because you wouldn't want to be sleeping in something that smelled
with
moldy.
mice in it or something.
It's not a good time to have allergies, to have a lot of allergies from mold and whatnot. So do keep them aired out. That would be maybe an annual thing that you could do, have them out in the sunshine and roll them up and keep them nice and dry, and probably in a tubby or something like that. But sleeping bags are great. And, again, we'll go over the natural fabrics. Nylons do not necessarily hold heat into your body. You want wool and cotton.
Are you wearing wool?
No, well, it's not that cold out today.
No, it's like 70 degrees. It's incredible. Yeah.
No, but I would, and I know the value of wool. And of course, back to the very beginning, your heat goes up through your body. So always have hats on, hands, feet. Wonderful to have these things in wool sweaters. Just go ahead and layer up. You can always unlayer, and it's just amazing how warm you can stay, but working at it a little bit.
My dad used to, he had two other brothers. So it was Bob, Dick, and John. And I think they slept like in a double bed or something, all three of them. But in order to keep them warm, Amma would take bricks that she had heated in the fireplace, and she would put them inside the covers before they went to bed so that their feet could be warm.
Rocks work, bricks work, and your bricks and rocks are multi-purpose. You will, for instance, using this, if you don't have a stove area to use it on, where of course you can't turn your fan on, so it really wouldn't make a difference, but you would need to remember to always put anything that's warm even, I'm going to show you to make a neat candle, use candle power, but you need to put it on something like a brick, or
Yeah.
2 bricks together, which would not be flammable against your cabinet or whatever.
Okay, I'm going to just stop you there for a second just to say we're going to do Heather's incredible story about how foraging kept her alive, her mother alive, which is why we have Heather, for next week. So we're kind of need to start wrapping it up, and I'll do my slideshow later too, so we don't have to stay longer.
Well, I'm going to go into
No. I want you to do what you're sharing is good. This is good stuff.
I think we've got most of it covered. We do want to talk about perhaps having another source of warmth. Now, this is going to be warmth in light, because that makes a difference, especially if you have children. Of course, you've got your candles. Most people have candles, but you'd be amazed in the 2 weeks how quickly we went through the candles. So,
it's important to have candles that don't have fragrances, because that can really poison you.
Absolutely.
A lot of people love these scented candles, and they, it's like a big deal, especially in the fall. But honestly, I'll give you a link below about why that is just such a damaging thing to use.
Absolutely. Be very careful. I'm going to be right back. I don't know.
Let's move. Should I move this?
Yeah, you can do
Okay.
that. Something very simple. I don't know if I'm allowed to show this or not. It's
Why?
very quickly. It's a Crisco. Now, it's horrible things. We don't use that to cook or whatever, but you can keep. I've had cans of Crisco. Last night I was making candles late into the night or watching them burn. But let me just show you.
Watching them burn. I love to watch candles.
Well, it was more an experiment to see just how long they would burn. But I can tell you that a can of Crisco, you would take your source of fire. Actually, that little stove would be a good thing.
Okay, where did I put it?
Oh,
Over
you
here?
don't need to do that, but you want to melt. You can even spoon it out, and you can melt it. You can even melt it into your jars.
Oh, okay.
And put them above the heat if it's not too hot. But you just want to get your jars.
What I would do is I would have a little pan, and then put water in it, and then put this in the pan.
Absolutely.
So that it would melt the Crisco.
The idea is just melt.
Without burning it.
And then you can I sometimes use regular wick. You can buy rolls of regular wick like this.
What makes it special?
It's coated with with wax.
Oh.
And wax will burn very quickly. In fact, when you're desperate and you're trying to get your little twig things going, or your rocket stove going, anything that has a little bit of wax on it will pick up the flame a little bit better. Just once you get your melted wax in here, you just want to cut cotton. It needs to be cotton. This is cooking twine. And you just put a little bit of a nut or an anchor so that you can drop it down into your wax while it's still wet. And then you just go ahead and maybe put a twig or a spoon just to lay on top of it. And when you can sit it outside if it's cold. And we're talking about when it is cold, and it will solid up again. You've got a candle. And they will burn for like 5 hours.
What?
Yeah, and even
I never thought I would be buying Crisco. That's interesting.
I don't know what it is about this stuff, but it's good for something. And it doesn't have an odor, and it doesn't smoke at all. But last night I burned down a candle like this at 5 hours. I said I had to go to bed, and there was still plenty left over. Now, what I have found. It's nice and light, but it is something that you could take 3 or 4 of these and sit them on your bricks that we talked about, put together. And then out in your yard, everybody's got a clay or a terracotta flower pot that would fit over these. You would just fit the pot over them. It can be a a smaller pot, just so it goes over them. If it's just one, obviously it's a smaller pot. But you see the pot acts like a chimney, and the top, you light the candle, and the heat comes from the top, but it also is a radiant heat around that clay.
Really?
And it's
Wow.
enough, honestly, in a small enclosed area, it's enough to help take the chill off the room. And it is just amazing how much heat it will put out. Just that little, plus it gives you, it's ambient, it gives you a little candlelight coming up, and it's someplace to warm your hands. And
Wow.
I just think it's an amazing trick. And you can anytime, even for the holidays or whatever, if it happens on the holidays, you can put a little coloring in here, some kind of natural coloring into it. It's not going to hurt you, as it doesn't give off an odor or anything. And you can make them colored. You can even give them to people for little gifts. Make them, put the top on them.
Well, that
Here's
might
your
be a nice thing to
emergency
make a bunch
candle.
of them to share with neighbors and stuff.
Yeah, emergency candles. That's good.
One of the best things you can do is help your neighbors to be alert
Absolutely.
to these things so that you're not the only one that people are coming to. So
The cooking is a big issue. Obviously, we're very limited as to cooking indoors. So most of us will be running outside to cook on our grills. And I wanted to, Jason has built a rocket stove, and I have built them in the past. They are so simple. You can build them on a whim as long as you have collected some bricks or cinder blocks around your property. Just something, just keep it there. It's not doing any harm.
So I'm showing them pictures now of my
Wow.
rocket stove.
thank you.
With Tristan and I and Max, we were cooking our dinner.
We made a tortilla soup and it cooked very quickly and it was amazing.
And as you pointed out, using sticks as your fuel makes it very not only efficient but easy to get more fuel. So that's a good design.
Absolutely.
So just look on YouTube for instructions on how to make a rocket stove. There are plenty of ideas out there.
Yeah.
Very inexpensive. The one you're looking at now, I made from cinder blocks, and those are very cheap when you go to a home improvement store.
Absolutely. And I asked Holly if she'd pull out her baking cooling rack. These work to put on top of your stoves. It give you a little more space, like on Jason's rocket stove over there. You could probably even put 2 pots on here, one to warm and the other one to cook, and move them around. But it is amazing what you have right around you that you can use in a crisis situation.
Which is why I think the people that lived through the Depression had such a hard time getting rid of anything because they had learned how to use anything to do everything. So I think that's one reason why that generation were kind of pack rats.
Well, my hope is to just open your mind from a happy place and to think about what you have around you that God has provided in your home, outdoors, and when you're outdoors, you'll begin to, I want people to think about what they can do to use what they're looking at. But the sun and the fire, they're great resources. They will keep us alive. We just need to know how to use them. And thank you. It's been
Oh
so
my
fun.
gosh, thank you. I've learned so much. And none of this was all that expensive.
Oh, no.
No, but it just takes a little bit of intentionality. We're always talking about intentionality here.
Yeah.
All right. Yes, dear.
If you'd like, your slide presentation is about 4 minutes if you'd like to show that, but it's up to you.
You know what? Let's go ahead, guys. We'll just be a little bit late today, but I do want to come back to my power thoughts that I wanted to share because that kind of anchors us. I think you've done a great job. Thank you so much.
Thank you, everyone.
All right, we'll go ahead and watch I haven't even seen it yet. Let me go watch. Okay, am I back? Okay, I hope you enjoyed my adventures this week virtually. And I'm really excited about some adventures I've got coming up that I want to include you all in, those that want to attend. So let me tell you about that real quick. I'm going to be having a nature craft day with a wild luncheon, and it will be so amazing. And so we'll be eating the wild harvest, and we will not be doing foraging, but we'll be creating with nature scraps. So when you are eating your pumpkins this year, save the tops, because that could be something special. You don't know. And also, like, look at that, could be really cool as well. So learn to see nature, all of it, as a gift. And wait till you see the things we're going to be making. It'll just be so worth it. If you have joined Patreon with me and you're helping to support me, then your cost will be almost half of what I'll be charging. So I'll let you know all of those details and when it will be, but it'll be a really fun way to wrap up this year with Wild Blessings. So while we were watching the video, I was putting together our wild salad. I don't know what this is going to be. It's going to be wildness. So I've got the artichokes, which these are the ones that I have fermented, and I'm going to slice them really thin. You can eat them raw, but the fermentation helps with the inulin. Then I've got all this dandelion. I've got more in the fridge. And then I love pickling eggs. And so I have lots of pickled eggs, and I'm going to chop these up to put into our mix. I did some zucchini, which is not wild, some feta, because who doesn't like feta? And then this is the burdock root, which I've decocted so that it's tender. And what I'm really excited about was on the stove right now is I took that amaranth, the quinoa, which is amaranth seed, and it's in the Chenopodium family, and I'm cooking that in the burdock pot liquor, which is so high in nutrition. And then when that gets cooked down and it dried out somewhat, that'll be in this little quadrant. We'll mix it all up and put some wonderful wild dressing on it. And that'll be our lunch along with some wild teas. And then I've got the black walnut bread for dessert. All right, I really hope you enjoyed learning along with me what Jody had to share. The scriptures say the people who know their God will display strength and take power in his name. And so knowing him is truly the series, the key that we need. And that's one reason why I'm always talking about being still and the strength that comes from knowing who he is and whose we are. We belong to him, and we are his responsibility. And if you've accepted Jesus and he's your savior, you belong to God, and he's restored you to his heart through the sacrifice of his beloved son. So Jesus is alive and he is everything. So if you've got Jesus, you have all you need. But let me talk about what I shared. This was so cool. I went out to my sit spot this morning to spend time with the Lord, and I'm like super busy trying to get ready for class. But I always find that my strength comes from being with the Lord and taking time to get away from the noise and the distractions and just be with God. And that's a spiritual discipline. And I'm hoping that you're developing that as well. So comment below if you've been keeping up your sit spot and all that. But let me share with you what I read, which blew my mind, because today is November 9th. This is Streams in the Desert. And this was my devotional for this morning. And this was so cool because today's topic was power, right? So listen to this. This is the scripture in Hosea 14:7. Men will dwell again in the shade. He will flourish like the grain. He will blossom like a vine. The day ended with heavy showers, and the plants in my garden were beaten down by the pelting storm. I looked at one plant that I had previously admired for its beauty, and I had loved for its delicate fragrance. After being exposed to the merciless storm, its flowers had drooped, and all of its petals were closed, and it appeared that all of its glory was gone. I thought to myself, I suppose I will have to wait till next year to see those beautiful flowers again. Yet the night passed, the sun shone again, and the morning brought strength to my favorite plant. The light looked at its flowers, and the flowers looked at the light. There was contact and communion, and power passed into the flowers. They lifted their heads, opened their petals, regained their glory, and seemed more beautiful than before. I wondered how this took place, these feeble flowers coming into contact with something much stronger and gaining strength. I cannot explain exactly how we are able to receive the power to serve and to endure through communion with God, but I know it is a fact. Are you in danger of being crushed by a difficulty or by heavy trials? Then seek communion with Jesus Christ, and you will receive strength and the power to be victorious, for God has promised, I will strengthen you, and I will never leave you. So that was my powerful thought to share with you to close today. And just, oh my gosh, the strength we get from being with the one who created us. Of course, it's like being connected. So we might not have electricity to plug into, but we always have the creator and sustainer, and the master of the storm is our Lord. And so we belong to him. So don't be afraid, because there is no fear in love. And I'm just really excited about sharing next week. And we'll have Heather share her story, and I'll let you know the details about the upcoming wild luncheon that we'll be having. And let me know if you're interested, and we'll try to find a date that works for as many of you that show an interest. So God bless you. And
Remind people on YouTube.
if you're on YouTube, like and subscribe, and you'll get a notification, I suppose, when the next one comes out, which is every Tuesday. So got so many cool things coming up. I can hardly wait for these future classes. But we'll talk about that some other time. God bless you, and adios.